Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Auburn Undercover Podcast, live on the 24/7 Sports Network. Christian Clemente here, joined by Jason Caldwell. Philip Duke should be with us here within a couple of minutes. Jason, we are on signing day eve, I guess you want to call it. We're 2 days away. Right. Yeah, we're 2 days away from signing day. Less than 48 hours now. In the next couple of hours, we will be officially a day away from signing day on Wednesday on the 20th. Auburn had its last chance to make an impact before early signing day, whatever you want to call it. It's really signing day now. 95% of guys sign in December now. It's really national signing day at this rate. But Auburn got its last chance over the weekend, as did schools across the country, obviously, to host recruits. Worked out pretty well for Auburn in the sense of it was the USC basketball game on Sunday. Auburn opened bowl practice for the Music City Bowl on Saturday. So they practiced on Saturday and Sunday. So recruits got a chance to watch practice on Saturday, got a chance to go to the USC basketball game on Sunday, and then they also got a chance to watch practice after that as well and hang out with the coaches a little bit more. So it was a good opportunity, and it worked out. We already saw it work out for Auburn in the transfer portal. Gage Keys, the former Kansas defensive lineman, that was the news of the weekend. That was the main event in terms of an actual kind of something happening. The former Kansas defensive lineman who was also at Minnesota for 3 years, went to Kansas for 1 year. He joins through the transfer portal with 2 years of eligibility. Stats don't necessarily blow you away, Jason, as I'm going to welcome Dukes in here as well. The stats don't necessarily blow you away when you look at Gage Keys, but you watch him play and he's pretty productive, and you see him in person, and he looks pretty incredible for a defensive line room that not only needs top-end talent, but also needs bodies, especially after the departure of Marcus Harris, another former Kansas defensive lineman. Gage Keys is he's one of the guys coming in.
Yeah, no, I think he's a guy that once we saw him in person, he looked a lot different than the guy I expected to look. And this is a long, athletic, big kid, and so you look at him, big man rather. He's already an older guy, so. I think it's an interesting guy because I think there's things you can do. I think he's a guy that could probably play that strong side in kind of what Keldrick fought this year, but also slide inside and play that tackle to three technique. So, guy that gives you some options, and I think that's an important thing when you think about those two guys. I think Keldrick, that's what we expect him to do, which is he played more of that strong side defensive end. I think we expect him to slide inside to more of a true defensive tackle spot next year. You got Bobby James Travis, a guy we'll see how he develops. DJ Reed is a guy that has that, he's 290, 295 body that's redshirting this year, but getting to see some of him in bowl practices. So a guy that gives you that experience and size to go along with it. And so I think it's a good addition for this defensive line as they look to just continue to stockpile talent and depth. And that's the key is you got to have a lot of those bodies on the front in the Southeastern Conference.
Yeah, it's kind of I don't want to say depth. It's a quality pickup that you get along the defensive line, and then you figure out after Wednesday, we talked to Hugh Freeze on Saturday, after Wednesday, depending on what happens with LJ McCrae, what happens with Amaris Williams, and we'll talk about them more later. If you don't pull one of those, if you don't pull both of those, depending on what happens, then you're probably going to hit the portal even harder for the defensive line. I think even if you were to get both LJ McCrae and Amaris Williams, I think you would still see Auburn go to the portal for another defensive lineman. That's just kind of the way that room is right now. So, we'll wait and see where things happen with there. But Gage Keys is the latest addition for Auburn through the transfer portal. Guys, we're going to be taking your questions from the YouTube chat all night. So for those of you that are in the chat, we appreciate you joining us live. If you're not subscribed to the YouTube already, definitely make sure to do that down below. Totally free. Doesn't cost you anything. Everyone in the chat, Pocket Watch, good to see ITAT legend, Jason Caldwell. Thanks, Pocket Watch. Of course, one of the first questions from Red, he's always asking about Perry Thompson signing on Wednesday. Yes, he will sign on Wednesday, I believe 10 a.m. or 9 a.m., one of those two. I think
he's signing on Wednesday.
Yes, he is signing on Wednesday. He visited Auburn over the weekend. He was there on Saturday. He was there on Sunday. By all accounts, everything went well. We didn't have a chance to catch up with him, but everything seemed to have gone really well. Even going into the visit, it felt like Auburn had still positioned itself really well, and Auburn, it feels like, has done everything that you would want Auburn to do going into signing day with Perry Thompson and quote unquote rumors about Alabama. Alabama went in home with him, but that's really all that we've seen in terms of Alabama making a move with Perry Thompson.
Yeah, I mean, Dukes, I think you'll chime in too, but I still think they feel really good about Perry Thompson. He was here and hung out with Cam Coleman, with Ryan Williams, with Malcolm Simmons, on and on. The list goes on, and watched practice Sunday evening, hung out Sunday night before he went home. I mean, it, to me, it seems like, hey, Auburn's still in really good position with Perry. Again, you never say never, and I don't know if I go 100% on anybody in terms of recruiting, but I still feel really good about Auburn signing Perry Thompson.
Yeah, from the people that I've spoken with, they all still feel really good about Perry. Just one of those guys when you talk about the right leveling up the talent level as far as the depth and how many like this is probably the best. If it goes as we see it right now, it'll probably be the best wide receiver haul we've seen in Auburn since probably maybe.
We'll see how it turns out.
Right.
But on paper, there's nothing that would match this.
I think the biggest buzz that I heard was like way back in the day was I was actually in school and it was Devin, Ben, Mix, and the rankings weren't like how they are now.
Yeah, Mix was actually the year before. He redshirted that first year.
Okay.
He was at Hargrave, and so
that's right.
But you had Courtney Taylor.
There you go.
Devin Aroma-Shadu. You had Ben Obamanu, and you had Monte Pitts, who
I forgot about Monte. Yeah,
he actually started against USC as a true freshman. He wound up moving to defensive back. Yep. He actually started at wide receiver at USC that year. So those four guys were all in the same class. Courtney Taylor is the guy that redshirted, wound up probably being, because coming from Aliceville, wasn't as polished as those guys yet. Wound up being a great player for them. That's the only comparison that I would have in terms of classes for an Auburn wide receiver group.
Yeah, absolutely. So exciting times on the Plains, and as far as this, even our jobs being so much different than it has been lately, right?
Yes, very different. I mean, even last year was chaotic because the staff was just scrambling, get everything together, see what happens going into signing day. Names are popping up, they're dropping off, just boom, boom, boom. This year, I mean, I was writing about it earlier today and writing about it again for tomorrow on Tuesday. There's really only 6 guys from the high school ranks that we're still tracking going into signing day. Auburn's class is pretty well positioned. One of those 6 guys is KJ Balden. And Dukes, this is a question Taylor made for you from Brass and Venison. I think it's clear that we're not getting KJ after his comments, citing his comments after officially visiting Florida State over the weekend. And he said he was asked, are you signing with Florida State on Saturday? And he said, man, you already know the answer to that question. And someone asked him, are you going to visit Auburn on Sunday? He said, no. From what we've been able to tell that visit, he was truthful about that. He did not visit Auburn on Sunday from what we've been able to gather. In terms of clear that we're not getting KJ after his comments, I would personally disagree with that in the sense that I think it's still going to be up in the air going into Wednesday. But Dukes, your thoughts on where Auburn sits after Florida State official visit for KJ over the weekend?
You know what? If I were to just kind of look at how the situation is right now, it really reminds me of the week that he committed to Florida State in the summer, where it was kind of like, Auburn got the last visit. They was at a really exciting visit, good time, but you could kind of tell things were shifting. Auburn made a really big move with KJ Balden over the past month and a half. And, I've been really, really, really like, hey, you guys, don't get your hopes up, just monitor it. I don't know, man. I talked to the parents earlier, just hearing from where they, the standpoint, it sounds a little different. I would say 50-50. Maybe, yeah, I would definitely say at least 50, at minimum 50-50. So we'll know later in the week, but I just think that Auburn has done so much. It's not just Auburn's recruiting of KJ Balden. It's also just Auburn for him. It's closer to home. He's got a lot of guys. I mean, there are at least 5 or 6 guys on the current roster who
in the secondary, K.N. Lee, T. Scott, Terrence Love.
Right. So all of these guys are from Atlanta, and if they didn't play with him in 707, they played in his dad's Little League program, Atlanta Ducks. So
Jalen Crawford.
Crawford, yep, JC. So, I mean, and I talked to KJ briefly, and it was just kind of like, shoot, I don't know, big dog. You know, Auburn has really, really given him something to think about. And so, no, I usually don't like to say stuff like this early, but I think Auburn has a really, really good shot at landing KJ Balden.
Here's the other thing, too, is that when you start getting other guys, it makes a difference. And hey, we'll see if it makes a difference with KJ Balden. We'll see if it makes a difference with LJ McCrae. We'll see if, Amaris Williams, all these guys, when you see a program start to go and go, okay, elite guy. Okay, I can see it now. Sometimes it's hard to be the only one. And that's where you look at, we'll see what happens with LJ McCrae. He may very well sign with Florida. But right now he's got to be feeling like, where'd everybody go? I mean, and sometimes that's a weird feeling to have. We'll see if that pays off for Auburn. I don't know. But I think, you look, and I think Duke's right. They've given themselves a shot. And if you give yourself a shot, it's different than in the past decade. Auburn has given themselves a shot with one of these guys, and it was going to make or break a class. Now you got a bunch of guys, and you're giving yourselves a shot to turn it into a top 4 class. That's the difference. It's already really good class. You're giving it a chance to go boom, and that's the difference in this field right now.
Yeah, we'll see what happens on Wednesday. I think naturally I put the question up. We'll transition to LJ McCrae a little bit. I wrote about him earlier today. For me, it feels like LJ is the one feel pretty good about where Auburn sits with Amaris Williams. Not pretty good. I would say I feel really good about where Auburn sits with Amaris Williams as a Monday night. Duke's just talked about KJ Balden. For me, for Auburn to get LJ McCrae, and this is a guess, this is just my gut feeling on his recruitment, it kind of feels like a domino effect. It feels like if you get Amaris Williams and if you get KJ Balden, you might just have enough momentum there on Wednesday to get LJ and say, hey, come on down. It kind of feels like you need that. It feels like you need something to just get you a little bit over the hump there. You're right there. You just need something. That's my guess. That's a guess. I don't know that. That's just how I feel about LJ McCrae.
Yeah, and it might not make any difference at all. He may be set. He may be good, and this may be all for naught. But I agree, and that's what I was talking about just now. It feels like one of those snowball where all these guys are going there. You know what? I liked Auburn too, but I needed a reason to go. That's where I belong to. Maybe that's it. Because then you go, hey, look, they said, hey, let's all go do it together. And we've talked about this before. We've seen this at other places, and we've seen it in Alabama, and it led to some really big things. Could it be a similar type situation? If they get these last few guys, it'll have a chance to be that way for sure.
Well, it's kind of come in waves. We saw it in the summer a little bit. Joe Phillips was the big one that kind of kickstarted things. He was the catalyst there that Auburn, he didn't publicly commit to Georgia, but that's where he was headed. And then Auburn made a move there at the end. He kickstarted things, and then DeMarcus Riddick joined on. Perry Thompson joined on. Jalen Crawford joined on. DJ Barber, Malik Blockton, Malcolm Simmons, Bryce Kane, all those guys. That was a wave. Kind of feels like Auburn might be setting up for maybe a little bit of a smaller wave because you don't have as many spots, but really, really elite players in terms of that.
You'd have a chance to, and if you did, it would not. Yeah, in terms of size, it might be a wave, but it would be a seismic wave if you were to get a few of these guys.
Yeah, Duke's, just anything to add on LJ McCrae before we move on from him? Just your thoughts there.
I think that just from here, he and KJ Balden probably have developed a pretty good relationship, and they're watching what each other does. Like right now, you'll see them probably go back and forth on Twitter in the next couple of days. Social media, they are paying attention. Excuse me. They are paying attention to each other. LJ McCrae is probably, in my opinion, and I think all of the players are great, this is one of those guys that feels like it helps change things when you point down to one person because of what he can bring to you on the defensive line. He kind of reminds me, I would hate this. If they could pull this off, it really reminds me of like that Derek Brown, Marlon Davidson era where you get guys who are good. You get guys who, like Marlon Davidson being able to go inside and out. That's where kind of I see like LJ McCrae. So I think if Auburn pulls this out, we may be looking at the start of a new era.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think Amaris Williams is planning to sign at 12:30 Central is the plan. From everything I've been able to gather, he plans to do everything then. I don't think he plans to have a flip or an announcement or anything like that before then. And he's the guy on the screen for those of you watching on YouTube. So 3 really, really big guys that plan to announce something or go final on Wednesday, obviously.
Yeah.
Take this.
And before we move on from him, I think people need to realize how good he is because he hasn't gotten a ton of attention, being from North Carolina. But this is a top 100 kid.
We just bumped him up. He's number 34. He's 2 spots away from being a 5-star.
34 in the country. And the thing about him is we talked to his coach. He said, look, this kid's just 17 years old. He was 225 pounds less than a year ago, changed schools, got into a strength and conditioning program. You look at him, and, man, he looks like a college sophomore already, and he's just scratching the surface of what he's going to be. So, I that's the thing. You look at him and go, man, you think about all these other guys. If Auburn gets a Amaris Williams and that's the guy they get on defensive line, they're going to feel really good about it because he's a guy that has a chance to come in early. And, again, another one of those guys, Dukes, another one of those guys that's 6'3", 6'4", he'll be about 270, play that strong side defensive end, probably in a year would be 285 and give you that, Marlon Davidson feel where you're going, hey, go in there on third down and pass rush. You're playing a team like Maryland where they've spread the field. You go, hey, we need more of those guys on the field. Gives you a lot of options.
Yeah, go ahead, Christian.
No, I was just going to say, go ahead and watch his highlights. He plays running back for his team. He plays both sides almost every snap, running back and D end. And it is freakish to watch from a guy who's 6'4", 270.
Yeah, I think when you can send guys like that at waves on defense, it just helps you. It helps the secondary. It helps the linebackers. When you got athleticism that you can send in fresh. When you've got, could you imagine having a LJ McCrae? Okay, well, LJ needs a breather. Okay, send in Amaris. Okay, well, Amaris needs a breather. Okay, you still got Keldrick Falk. Oh, this guy needs a breather. You're raising the level of talent in that room, and so you can go against the Georgia where they've got five stars on the offensive line, and you can send that same type of talent at them. And that's what, and I think along the interior lines is where the talent gap has been in the last few years, and so now you start to build that up, and especially on defense. And 2019 was it 19? We go down. Auburn goes down to LSU and almost pulls that out against the best offense probably in college history.
It was where you played really two down defensive linemen for much of that game, and I just thought about it. You're thinking we're just talking about guys. You get Amaris Williams is a Colby Wooden type feel to me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when I see body type, you look at him and he looks like a guy that from 40 yards away you go, that guy's probably 235, 240, and then you get closer to him and you go, he's a little bigger than I thought. And you get a little closer to him and you go, well, he's a lot bigger than I thought, but he looks like he's completely put together. So he looks like an outside linebacker, but he's a guy that looks that way at a 265, 270 pound frame.
Yeah, for sure.
And you're trying to add those guys to Malik Blockton has gotten significantly better. He had a fantastic senior season. TJ Lindsey is a guy that Auburn thinks very highly of. You see him in person, and it catches your attention. He is an eye catcher for sure in terms of his size. Dimitri Nicholas there on the inside as well, although he won't sign until February. Let's hit some questions from the chat now. Here's one from Kyle. Is Auburn still recruiting Bradley Shaw? Nope. They're done at linebacker. DJ Barber and DeMarcus Riddick, Jamonte Waller and Joe Phillips. Although, Jason, we did learn that Joe Phillips, he's been in bowl practices and he's been working as an inside linebacker, actually.
Yeah. They're playing him kind of at that Sam, kind of the strong side linebacker, but in the box and at 250. That would give you a little bit different feel at that position. So it'd be interesting to see. Maybe it's just, hey, let's look at it and see what it looks like kind of feel, because I think they feel like he's a guy that can play the edge and do those things. But maybe it's more of a just look at it and see what it looks like kind of feel here early on in bowl practice, because that is what you can do with these guys now that are here early. Malik Blockton, I think, is supposed to be out there today. You can go, okay, where do they look like? And maybe gives us an idea of what you want to do between now and spring practice.
Jason, here's another question for you, actually, real quick from Corey. Do we think Keldrick Falk hits 290 by next fall and plays the 3 tech?
I do. I think he'll get there. Here's the thing to remember about Keldrick. Keldrick had the hand and thumb injury that hampered him as an early guy last year. So he came in January and had all that. So he didn't really get a chance to work out between then and spring practice. Well, then he had some other things that kind of set him back. So he hasn't really had an off season in the weight room. So you think about what he's done, and it's just natural growth, the training table. Now, he's working out, he's doing those things, but he hasn't had this type, what he'll have between the bowl game and spring practice. This 3 months for these first year guys, you think about Keldrick Falk, Connor Lew, who hasn't even got, and they've been here for a year, but this next period for those guys, I mentioned DJ Reed, it's going to be dramatic for those guys. So I think Keldrick's a guy that's going to be 290 and is a guy that slide inside on third down, can still play strong side. I think he's going to give you a lot of versatility, though.
Yeah, and Coach Dom, the strength coach, is a guy that we have heard nothing but great things and rave reviews from the players about what he's done, especially in just a year there. So it'll be fun to watch some of those guys develop. We'll hit this question. This is kind of combining two. AU J-Rob, are there any AU commits planning to sign after Wednesday? Dimitri Nicholas does not plan to sign until February. In terms of other targets, Coen Eckles, someone was asking about him in the chat. He will announce something on Friday, the 22nd, his birthday. And Ryan Williams, the 5-star wide receiver committed to Alabama, who is back on campus this weekend, still is planning to sign on his birthday, which is February 9th. So that second signing period. As for the question about Coen Eckles, he visited LSU over the weekend on an official visit. And LSU is picking up some steam there. This is one that not necessarily quite as positive from everything that I've heard in terms of recruiting battles. I still think Auburn is positioned in a spot where they could still win out. I don't think LSU has won his recruitment necessarily, but this is a guy that has wanted to be close to home. That's kind of why he chose A&M in the first place, or part of it. He ends up decommitting from A&M with the staff turnover there. Kind of felt like when he did that, it was Auburn. Kind of felt like it might be over then. You know, Jake Thornton was in Katy, Texas there to see him that day. Hugh Freeze and Jake Thornton went back to see him last week. Auburn was second in his recruitment in the summer. Auburn was the main team that stayed consistent over the fall. Auburn put in a ton of work, and unfortunately for them, it just might not be enough. LSU is a little closer to home, and it seems like LSU has a good bit of his attention. Now I'm saying that on Monday night at 8:53 p.m. when he's not planning to sign until Friday.
Long way to go. You're right. And it's a long way between now and Wednesday morning. And
yes,
when you think about recruiting terms, you ask any coach right now, and they'll say the longest 48 hours of the year, we're in the middle of it right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just trying to get to the finish line. And for this one, I don't even think we're on the home stretch yet.
No, there's still a long way to go. While we're talking about guys who won't sign in December, let's touch on Ryan Williams a little bit. Jason, we got a chance to see him at Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game. He's named the MVP of the game shortly after reclassifying up. Not really a surprise. I think he had like 8 catches for 92 yards and I think 2 touchdowns, something along that line, which is a casual day for Ryan Williams. Obviously fantastic. He was the talk of Twitter yesterday as he was in town for the USC game. As he was in the student section, you had the picture of him with Cam and Perry, the fans chanting, "We want Ryan," doing their best to try and influence him as much as possible. And then he got the opportunity to spend more time with the coaches on Sunday before departing as well. So, Jason, just keep chipping away and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, Sunday was a day where if you're Auburn, you go, look, you've done all you can do. You're like, hey, you put your cards on the table. You showed them an incredible environment. They hung out with guys. They got to feel that vibe. There's no question that Ryan Williams is very comfortable at Auburn. Will that be enough? I don't know. We basically got a month and a half to see what happens. But there's no question that this staff has gone from zero traction under Brian Harsin to now you got some tires on the road and moving forward, because there was nothing there to begin with, and it's pretty remarkable to see the growth in that wide receiver room. Marcus Davis has done an incredible job. I mean, it's just an incredible job to see what he's done. Hugh Freeze very involved in recruiting the wide receivers. But yeah, I mean, there's movement, there's a shot, and if you're Auburn, you go, hey, see if you when you got Cam Coleman throwing out Infinity Stone, and hey, I'm a 51-year-old guy, I have no idea what that means other than what people have said, but it's obviously something that is pretty important to them, and it tells you that they want to join forces together because they realize, hey, 5's better than 4 and 5's better than 1 for sure.
Yeah, so we'll see. Still planning to sign February 9th, so we've got some time on that one. And Auburn is still expected to get the last official visit as well, which will be noteworthy in the end of January and February. I want to hit on a couple portal guys real quick that were on campus this weekend. Didn't get a chance to talk with either of them, but two very noteworthy guys. Two former Georgia Bulldogs. AJ Harris, the 5-star, was a 5-star cornerback out of high school. Started his high school career. Oh gosh, where did he start? Jason, you're gonna have to help me out with that. But then he ended up at Central Phoenix City. Glenwood.
Glenwood school, yeah. Glenwood then transferred to Central Phoenix City for his senior year. Super talented, explosive, quick twitch, not small. I mean, he's 6 foot, 6'1", 190 pounds. I mean, this is the prototypical type of guy that you want. A corner can do a lot of different things back there.
Yep. So he was on campus. He's been familiar. Dukes, you were reporting on it. Zach Etheridge recruited him out of high school. So that prior relationship is definitely huge. Probably a big reason why Auburn was able to get him on campus so quickly. Feels like Auburn sits in a pretty good spot to potentially land him. I was talking about it with someone earlier today. AJ Harris is not huge on social media, not huge stuff like that. Honestly, I think there's a chance that, Auburn or whoever could just announce that, he's signed or whatever. And that would be that, in all honesty.
He may just show up and start practicing and be on school in January and nobody knows. I mean, he could do it that way.
Yeah. But Dukes, just what's your thoughts on AJ Harris? And then we'll talk about Jamal and Doomis Johnson.
Yeah, I think AJ Harris wanted to get closer to home. From what I've been hearing, he trained with a former Auburn DB. I'm gonna mess you up with this one, Jason. You remember LaMel Ages?
Columbus Carver High School, LaMel Ages, I sure do.
Yes, sir. So yeah, trained with LaMel. He's very familiar with Auburn. I think it could be one of those things where he's just look up one day, you see him on the roster. Like from what I know, wasn't crazy about the recruiting process the first time around. He picked the schools. He didn't really want to talk to a whole lot of people. Coaches either. I mean, I talked to some coaches at different schools. Like, hey man, this kid is a tough nut to crack, dog. Like they used to always say that. So the fact that I think the proximity and playing at home and the way Auburn wants to use him, I think with AJ he could play corner and safety. He probably will be playing a little bit of both. If he does come to Auburn, you can see him all over the secondary. He gives you that positional versatility, long, explosive, and you'll see him work on his lower bend as far as getting in and out of his break so he could be a more effective cornerback. But as far as when you talk about a nice piece of clay as a defensive back, it doesn't get much better than AJ Harris.
Yeah, you're losing your older guys in that room. You're losing Jalen Simpson. You're losing DJ James. You're losing Nehemiah Pritchett. And it kind of felt like Auburn might go get a veteran there. You might just infuse more young talent. And you feel like you have a lot of young talent there with Kayan Lee and Colton Hood and T. Scott, T. Love, J.D. Rim. Keontae Scott will be the old head in the room next year, and we got a chance to talk with him today. But it kind of felt like you might go get another veteran. But when a guy like AJ Harris becomes available, you kind of just say, we'll roll with the young talent and figure out what happens along the way.
Yeah, and you think about, you mentioned having Keontae Scott and DK back there. And you think about Donovan Kaufman having guys like that around, and then we saw Kaden Lee start 4 or 5 games at least and play a bunch this season. So he got some experience. AJ played a bunch. If he comes in, that's a guy that played and has been around it already. And you think about JD Rim is a guy that comes back that played a whole lot 2 years ago, not as much this past season. But Champ Anthony got a little experience as a junior college player. There's some guys that are a little older. You would not be throwing a bunch of true freshmen in the mix. And even you mentioned Colton Hood and T. Scott, T. Love. These guys got some run this year. It wasn't much, but now they're getting some bowl practice, and they'll have a spring. They'll get a chance in this bowl practice to play some too, especially those corner guys outside. So it could be an interesting group.
Yeah, Jason, we talked to Colton for a second yesterday, and he's like, getting a lot more reps in now.
Yeah, I said you're getting baptism by fire, getting ready to play Maryland, because those guys are going to have to play, and so it's going to be a lot. It's going to be really good for them to kind of see where they stand and what they need to work on.
Yeah, and then let's talk about Doomis Johnson, the former Georgia linebacker. We did not know that he was visiting. He showed up. The first clue that we had that someone big was showing up was the entire staff outside of Hugh Freeze, both coordinators, personnel staff, everyone came out to greet someone that was coming. I kind of thought it was going to be Ryan Williams, and Ryan Williams was about 5 minutes after Doomis Johnson. So the whole staff was down there for Doomis Johnson and Ryan Williams to show up. This was a guy, as soon as he walks in, you can tell that's an SEC linebacker. He is a dude in person. Massive. You can see why he was a Butkus Award finalist last year. Really, really good linebacker. This is a guy that, Dukes, you might know more than me, but I don't think Georgia particularly wanted to lose him. But that's just kind of the way things go in the transfer portal and the NIL era now. And Auburn has jumped at the opportunity to potentially add an all-SEC linebacker to its room, which could, with the return of Eugene Asante and some of those other guys, it could transform that room going into next year.
Yeah, Doomis Johnson, his nickname, Pop. Everybody calls him Pop. Pop will pop you. Like it's pretty simple. He's the prototypical linebacker that Auburn wants to put in that middle, a veteran guy. You put him around with somebody who's kind of athletic, who's got that 3-down frame like Asante, and you get an enforcer up the middle, somebody who makes the room tougher, makes the defense tougher. You got that old school kind of traditional Auburn linebacker. You just want to be honest, like in the long line of Auburn linebackers are guys who are gritty, may not have been the prototypical like the new age linebacker. He's a classic Mike. Make no mistakes about it. He's gonna punch a guard in the mouth, and he can also set the edge. You saw him. You saw how much he helped Georgia come out on top when they couldn't stop Robbie Ashford in the running game. Doomis Johnson made some pretty big plays going down the stretch. So right now, I talked to him a little earlier. He said Auburn and Kentucky right now. Probably wants to make a decision sooner than later. Really likes Auburn. Had a lot to say about Coach Dom as far as transforming his body and getting ready. He sees himself as a professional. I think he had a 4th or 5th round grade this year, so he wants to get back to school, see if he can get that up, play somewhere where he feels like he can play a little bit in space and show some more of his athleticism. So I think Auburn has a really good shot, but I think if it's not Auburn, it'll probably be Kentucky.
I could really see him. You mentioned playing in space. I could see this guy being a huge addition in terms of pass rush, because I think that's where a guy like that could become extremely valuable for guys on the next level. Instead of, hey, I only see you as a run stopper in the middle of a defense. All of a sudden you transform and go, hey, you're a run stopper, but you also had 7.5 sacks. Then it changes the way teams look at you, because they look at you then as not only is he a potential middle guy, but he could be a potential middle guy in a 3-4 where you're talking about, moving guys around and doing a lot more blitz and doing some zone blitz stuff. To me, you look at what Auburn does on defense, and look at what Ron Roberts did with Eugene Asante, and Cam Riley starting to show some of those things. And you go, man, you put a guy like this in that, and all of a sudden you look at a transformation. I I think it'd be a massive get for Auburn. I think it's actually a pretty good fit if he were to pick the Tigers.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens with him. Transfer portal in terms of timeline. Dukes, you mentioned sooner rather than later. Timeline stuff is really up in the air with transfer portal guys. Just play it by ear and figure it out. We'll hit a couple more questions from the chat, and then we'll probably wrap it up. Thanks to everyone that's tuned in. We're close to 1,000 people here on signing day eve, 2 days away. If you're not subscribed to the YouTube, definitely make sure to do that. We will have a signing day eve show tomorrow, same time, 8:30. And then the plan is to go live on signing day at, I believe, 7 o'clock Central, when we've already locked in some of Auburn's commits, who at that point will be signees to join the show. The goal is to get as many of those guys on as possible. So it'll be a really fun show. We did it last year. It was a lot of fun. And we'll try and do the same thing. Here's a point that Hugh Rayleigh made, that this is a name that I kind of always forget to mention, but mention that I can't wait to see JC Hart play. He's buffed up. He absolutely has. He's gotten a lot bigger. Jason, I think we both kind of agree that I think safety might be a really good spot for him personally.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Here's the thing about him is you look and he's got the speed. There's no question about that. Even before he's done, he's going to be a guy that's going to be 6'2", 210 pounds playing defensive back. But he also is a guy that can run fast enough to play outside a corner. The thing we'll see for him is how much he's able to adjust to the passing game and having to turn and run and do those things as a corner. Because you just don't see a lot of that in 1A football anywhere, much less 1A football in Alabama. So he just didn't have to do any of that. But athleticism, size, length, all those things, he brings all that to the table. So they got a really nice mix of DBs in this class that are on campus now. But I think JC's a guy that I think when you start talking about potential, I think he could play any number of spots. But, man, if he were to settle in as that downhill guy with his speed at safety, if you can have a guy like that can also cover, then, man, it opens up an entire playbook on defense to have a guy like that.
Last question that we'll hit from Noel. I think we've answered this before, but we'll touch on it again. Expectations for Robert Lewis, the portal wide receiver that Auburn picked up from Georgia State. With the departure of Var Johnson, that will probably vault his role even a little bit more. He's 5'11". I don't know what he weighs, but he's around 5'11". He's a true 5'11". Talked to him in person before. And he can move outside a little bit, but more of a slot guy. So then you're looking at him, you're looking at Jay Fair, you're looking at Caleb Burton, and then you add a guy like Bryce Kane and Malcolm Simmons play inside a little bit as well. So, but Jason, we talked to Peyton Thorne today. I just kind of thought about this. We talked to Peyton Thorne, and he's excited for those young guys. He's also excited to get a veteran and get some guys that have some experience there as well.
I think it's really interesting, and when you think about having a quarterback back for year two, Peyton Thorne didn't have spring practice either. We were talking about Keldrick Falk earlier. Now you get to go through a spring, and you have your quarterback, and you have Holden Gardner, who's familiar with the system now, and Hank Brown, who's familiar with the system now, and you have some of these young guys already in, even in the summer. Last summer, they're trying to play catch up, and Peyton Thorne's trying to get caught up in an offense he didn't know. Well, even the guys that won't be here in the spring, when you have your quarterback that knows the offense and is able to lead guys, makes a huge difference. So, I think it's big, but I think he's a guy that comes in, you're right, plays that role where he can go out and make some plays. I think he's an explosive guy. It's really going to be interesting to see how much and how many of these young guys get on the field early. I think they're going to have a shot to go in and get some significant playing time.
Let's actually hit one more from James, because he's always in the chat supporting, so I want to make sure to hit his question. To end up with the top 5 class, what combination of players do you think we get? To get top 5, I think you have to get Amaris Williams, obviously. And I think you might have to get both for KJ Bolden and LJ McCrae. If
you get LJ McCrae, then it's going to knock Florida out of that group. And so you're
probably if you get Amaris Williams, you're going to flip over Florida, because you're 11 and Florida's 10 right now. So
I said, if either one of those, you get those two guys, and Florida's out of the picture already. I think a combination of those two guys and making sure you sign all your guys, and then probably a Coen Eckles type guy would probably get you in the top 5.
Yeah, if not, it would get you pretty close, 6 or
It'd
7.
be close enough to where you could go, hey, we'll if you're the coaching staff, you'll turn some cartwheels and say, hey, we had a great haul. Let's move forward.
Yes, move forward to February and February 9th with Ryan Williams and see what happens.
Yeah.
So we're going to wrap it up there for the Monday show of the Auburn Undercover podcast before signing day on signing day week. Make sure to check us out at auburnundercover.com if you're not already. Guys, any final thoughts? I think we've hit on pretty much everything, to be honest. I'm sure we're missing something, but
I think it's just what we talked about earlier. It's just wait and see. Coaches, can still talk to guys on the phone. They can still do those things, and it's just trying to hold on to what you got and see if you can get a few more. And that's like I said, this is the most nerve-wracking and difficult time for a coaching staff that has not slept a whole lot. In this month that's leading up to signing day, it's been pretty wild when you talk about portal, practice, 25. Recruiting for your 24 class, holding on to your 24 guys. It's a rough time.
Dukes, your thoughts to wrap it up?
Man, what a time, right? I mean, in comparison to last year, man, last year was kind of cool too, just because Freeze just got here. And I think as the years go by, you're going to look back at last year's class as another class that really, really helped turn the tide. But now it's just starting. You're getting the whole Freeze effect now. And I think as far as when it comes to recruiting, Auburn knocked that hire out of the park. And I think me and Jason talked about it. It was when there were so many different coaching candidates at the time, me and Jason both agreed that Freeze was probably going to be the best fit, especially to recruit coming from where you came from with Brian Harsin. So, man, it's just a really exciting time. Like my phone's blowing up. Everybody's, ain't this a funny time? Like we start to talk to more guys who cover other schools, and everybody's trying to figure out what each other knows and trying to be first. So it's a really cool time. So you guys stay tuned, and thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, appreciate everyone tuning in. We'll catch you at the same time tomorrow over here on the Auburn Undercover YouTube channel at 8:30. We'll do probably 30 minutes max because we'll be up very early on Wednesday, and we'll be up.
Try to get some sleep. Maybe.
Yeah, we'll be up late on Tuesday trying to get our stuff together there at the last minute as well. So we'll see you again tomorrow at 8:30. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and we will catch you in a little under 24 hours now.